I'm Eric Barnes at the Daily Memphian, and welcome to the Sidebar, a weekly show on the community, arts, culture, and more. Today, we're talking with Kevin Thompson from MoSH, so stay with us for a conversation with Kevin. Kevin, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
You are executive director of MoSH. How long have you been at MoSH now?
January 2020, right before COVID hit in March.
Was it really?
So welcome to the museum.
Well played, sir. Well played.
Exactly.
Really? January 2020?
January 2020, so going in my fourth year now.
And so you closed things down, not
Within
to relive
2
it.
months.
Within 2 months, just like how do we reboot, reset?
We really did.
Sort of
really did. That was a scary time because we were really dependent on school field trips for a lot of revenue.
Yeah.
That was our peak field trip season. And so we, within a matter of a week, had to unwind about 1,500 different school field trips and exhibits that we were having, and then renegotiate all our contracts. Took the opportunity, though, to really take advantage of the hand you're dealt. And so accelerated some of our new strategic direction through that process over the next year or two, and really got the ball rolling in the direction we're headed.
Yeah. And MoSH, although it's been MoSH for a while now, but still some people, MoSH includes Pink Palace, but the museum, the planetarium, includes Lichterman Nature Center, the Mallory Neely House, and what I did not know that I was guilty of this, Coon Creek Science Center. But what people think of traditionally as Lichterman and the Pink Palace, that's all under the MoSH umbrella.
That's all under the MoSH umbrella.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what now, however long removed we are from COVID and all the restrictions and such, what are things you learned that you kept in place, if anything?
It was opportunistic in that we were trying to take the museum in a new direction. So in 2018, we had done a strategic plan with a group out of Chicago called IA Collaborative, introduced to us through FedEx. FedEx uses them for quite a lot of their product research. Yeah. And so we really felt like we had a nice plan to reconnect with the community. We knew at that time, as I was on the board, we knew we did middle school field trips exceptionally well, but we didn't feel like we were really connected to all of Memphis. And so what we were looking for is that something Memphians want? Let's start there. There was a group of us on the board that felt like we need a strong history and science museum in the city. Yeah. That's a cultural asset. That's important. But we didn't know if the public felt that way. And what we learned was, the public wants this. We're just not serving their needs. So out of that plan came some ideas, some thoughts, some direction, one of which was a rebrand to connect all our properties, and then also to outreach to the regional community beyond Memphis who may not know what Pink Palace is or Lichterman, which are all affinities to us local Memphians, but not to a St. Louis person or an Atlanta person. So we went through it. We had the base going in, which was important. Certainly was not the intended route I wanted to start to get there, right? You'd thrown a curveball. So really started off restructuring the organization, the departments. We ended up having a lot of turnover through that process. Anytime you go through a strategic change, you're going to have some turnover. Yeah. So we worked through all of that during COVID. And now that we're coming out of it, and we really are, from the museum standpoint, just coming out of it. We didn't see field trips start coming back till this past December. And so for us, because they had to catch up once they got back in school. So we're now back in regular field trip season right now as we close out the school year for the first time since January of 2020. So it's great to be there. It's great to see our numbers going up. Right. And what we're doing now is really focusing in on the programming, the exhibitions, and the things in the direction we want to take the museum. So it's fun to be at this place right now at this point in time. Yeah.
Let's talk about some of those things coming up. Obviously, camps are coming up. You talk about were camps? What did y'all do for camps during COVID? Because my kids are old; they're college kids and beyond. So, what did parents do for camps during COVID?
Not much. Kept folks at home. So we did a bunch of stuff that you could download off our internet site, like PDFs with stuff you could find around the house to do little experiments, things like that. We did a few things online. We found mixed success with that. A lot of parents, if you're working in the day, it would be good to have something online for your kid to do. But the hands-on activities is where we really focus. Camps are new for us at Pink Palace. Really? We've had them at Lichterman for years. Yeah. And last year was the first time we had them at the Pink Palace. And so we're doing that again this year, and we're getting better at it. Yeah. We also host Code Crew and Girls Inc. summer camps at the Pink Palace. So last year we had a space problem, which was wonderful. All summer, the whole education wing downstairs by the theater was just full of kids. And we want to continue that this year. We're working on bringing some of our programs together and utilizing each other's resources this year a little bit better.
Yeah.
And we'll continue to head in that direction and really focus in as we build out our camp program and start to do some after school stuff next year. We really want to build that into science learning, history learning, and just have fun with the kids at the museum.
After school programs, how does that work? Is that, I mean, are kids parents bringing them? Or are they taking the bus there? Or
haven't done it yet. So we've got all that to work out, but our goal is to really start that for our next fiscal year, which starts July 1. So I don't know if we'll make it fall semester, but our goal is sometime next school calendar year to start offering after school programs. And we're in the content development of what those look like right now.
Again, we're talking to Kevin Thompson, Executive Director of MoSH, which includes Pink Palace, the Lichterman Nature Center, Mallory Neely House. I'm struggling to say that, in Coon Creek Science Center. You've also got a couple exhibits coming up at the Pink Palace and at the planetarium. You want to do the laser? Let's talk lasers.
Talk about lasers?
Let's talk about lasers.
About lasers. We got some great partners. So Overton Park Shell on Wheels, we've partnered with, along with Crosstown Brewing and WYXR. So we are doing this summer Laser Live. So once a month. Next one's this coming Friday, May 13th. What is that? 19th.
19th. Yeah.
Once a month, we'll be partnering with a live band, and then we'll be sort of DJing the lasers as part of that.
Yeah.
And that all coincides with our upcoming 2 exhibits on guitars. Crosstown Brewing, we piloted it with them. They did a Massasour beer with us and did the launch party, and we had the Lucky 7 brass band in the planetarium, and we DJ'd the lasers, and that was a lot of fun. Worked way better than we thought it would, and so we've been tweaking
the lasers. I think I know what you mean, but what does that mean?
That means our staff runs the laser show to the music that the live band is playing.
Right.
So,
and they're doing it live because, back when we were joking before, back in high school, I would go up to Seattle. It was Laser Zeppelin at the Seattle Center Coliseum and their big thing. That was a little more scripted, I think.
That is. So normally we'll buy a show like Taylor Swift we recently had. So that show comes with a preset laser package.
Gotcha.
That runs in tandem with the music. This will be a little more live with staff actually doing it. So
how many people can you fit in there?
About 140 total.
Really?
So tickets. We're doing 2 shows each showing, an early and a later show, and tickets are online already on our website.
Talk a bit more the exhibits. One is America at the Crossroads. Both guitar music exhibits. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes. So we have, and this follows the theme we've been running in our last 2 exhibits, which is when we bring that national touring exhibit through, what we are trying to do is connect it to our community and our region. And so we've been doing a local add-on component. So America at the Crossroads is from the National Guitar Museum, and it talks about the cultural impact the guitar has had on America's culture. And so it kind of goes through time, and it relates how stringed instruments, the guitar, have been a part of our history and our culture as a country. We add to that Grind City Picks because Memphis is a music town. And so the hard part of that was sticking to guitars. And so
got it.
We're such a music town. So we've been working with local artists here to showcase some of their work as well as part of that. So we've got over 40 local guitars and guitarists that we will be talking about and showcasing as part of our exhibit, and the national touring one has about 60 guitars. Memphis Travel is supporting the exhibit. So we've been working with them over the last year to collect data on how we impact tourism in the city, and that's been a great partnership. And so they're very supportive in helping us promote this upcoming exhibit, and it opens June 10th.
June 10th. And out at Lichterman, I mean, is it now? It's just the nature time. I mean, is there specific I said that like a real weirdo, but
I was thinking anybody want to pull privet and pull weeds?
Yeah, exactly.
Go to Lichterman.
Exactly. Is that enough for the summer at Lichterman? Or are there other exhibits going on there right now?
We've got a couple of things we're working through with Lichterman. One is the opening of what we call Discovery Forest. And so we're about to launch the bid process for that, which is an outdoor I call it, when I grew up, we had a neighborhood, and at the end of the neighborhood, you went and you played in the woods.
Yeah.
And you don't really get that in an urban setting. So that's kind of what we're creating at Lichterman. And what we call is a natural playscape, but it's not exactly like what you might see at the Botanic Garden or Shelby Farms. It's not that playground type equipment. This is more build a fort out of sticks, play in the dirt, some tweaking of that a little bit in an urban setting, but really a natural playscape that we want to start construction soon and have complete by end of this year. So we're in the thick of that. We're also in the process, of course, of doing all the maintenance that comes with springtime in a nature center.
Yeah, right.
So I am serious. If you need volunteer work, come on out with your team and pull some privet. Help us groom.
Sorry I'm busy that day, Kevin. I would love to help, but I'm just
like to
so
haul gravel.
busy that day. Really busy. That's why 6 years in Crosstown without leaves, without grass, without any of that.
That's it.
I thought I'd miss it, and I haven't missed it in 6 years. So, and then I guess we'll just move through it. Mallory Neely house. Why do I keep saying that in such a weird way? Mallory Neely house in Victorian Village. What's going on there? It's in Victorian Village, right?
It's right now we're currently closed.
Okay.
But we are offering rental facilities there.
Okay.
And so we've been doing some program development behind the scenes with it. Really, it's closed right now just to staffing shortfalls.
Oh, really?
And so we're hoping if revenue comes back, we'll be able to open that sometime in the next year. In the interim, though, we have been working on programming, field trip programming, and things like that, so that when we are able to fully staff it, we can bring it on. But if someone wants to come and do a private tour or something like that, we can certainly open it up specifically for groups or rentals. We've done a couple of rentals. In fact, Christian Brothers just did a little historical band concert there this past weekend.
Okay.
As part of their 150th longest continuous running band in America. And we've got a small exhibit in the mezzanine showcasing their work this year. So it's kind of a fun time.
Okay. And then I think it's last one, but I did not know that Coon Creek Science Center, which is, it's up near UT Martin.
McNairy County. No, not up. It's over in McNairy County, south of Jackson, Tennessee. So about a 2-hour drive through the back roads.
Okay. How long has that been part of the mix here? Forever? And I just didn't know.
I don't know how long, but at
time.
Least 20 years.
Yeah.
At least 20 years.
Yeah.
Doug Noble, when he was executive director, and that team acquired the land. So that's a great story for us in twofolds. As we begin to look at our new mission, what we're wanting to anchor on is what's called the Mississippi embayment. So 70 million years ago, we were underwater. And so the mosasaur, which we now have a statue out front where our gatehouse used to be, was the predator of the time. And so we want to anchor off of that as we start to redo our exhibits long term, because that geological event really set everything in place for who we are today as a city and who our region became. If you look in the shoreline, so long story short, Coon Creek was part of the shoreline. So literally, if you go out there, you can pull a fossil straight out of the ground that's 70 million years ago. Our site has seashells. Other sites in the area have things like crabs and seashells and other pieces. But as we move forward and we anchor all of that, it really comes into when we look at that shoreline as it goes through Alabama, we know the counties that it flowed through during cotton production days produced 10 times the cotton because of the deposits in the soil from the Mississippi embayment and the richness of that soil. Look at those counties today, mostly Black, mostly Democrat. And so these are the stories that tell us who we are because of something that happened 70 million years ago that folks don't really understand has a connection to modern society. So that's our rationale for anchoring off of that, and then where we branch out to start telling our story of how we came to be as a city.
And describe that facility, because probably most people haven't been there. They've maybe been to the other three, but they haven't.
So right now we are we lease it to UT Martin to do grad and undergrad studies there. It's a research facility. And so It is open to the public. I know at least one weekend that they run. We certainly have a great working relationship with them as we began to build out programming last year with Girls Inc. We took one of their camps, the older girls, chartered a bus out there. They picked a fossil right out of the ground, brought it back to our labs at the museum, and grad students from UT taught them how to clean it, what it was, how to research it, and then did a little summary of it because we only had a week with them as part of the camp. So we ran that camp all summer long.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's it.
Yeah. Are any of the camps in Memphis sleepover camps, or are they all day camps?
We are just day camps.
Just day camps. But that is the sleepover. That girls
went and came back. It's about 2 hours away.
Okay.
So we left a little bit earlier in the morning, got back in the afternoon.
Gotcha. We'll come. Let me take a minute and do a little bit of housekeeping. We're here with Kevin Thompson from MoSH, including Pink Palace, the planetarium there, museum there, Lichterman Nature Center, Mallory Neely House, and Coon Creek Science Center. I am Eric Barnes, and this is the Sidebar, which airs here on WYXR 91.7 every Thursday at 11:30. Focus on the community, arts, culture, and everything in between. It's not just a radio show, though. It's one of many weekly podcasts we do at the Daily Memphian, including the Behind the Headlines podcast, Bill Dree's Politics podcast, On the Record, the Memphis Grizzlies podcast that Chris Harrington and Drew Hill do, and Jennifer Biggs and Chris Harrington's food podcast, Soundbites, which also airs here on WYXR every Thursday at 11, right before the Sidebar. All of our podcasts are on the Daily Memphian site, as well as iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get this podcast, this radio show, as a podcast on the WYXR website or the WYXR app. That app also includes all the shows on WYXR, the talk shows and the music shows, the full archives of various DJs and the music they put on, so you can go back and listen to that. I'll note also that WYXR is nonprofit, listener-supported radio, so consider donating. If you're listening, go to WYXR or to the app for that. You can also become a member and get various benefits that way, and we hope you will. And I should lastly say that you should subscribe to the Daily Memphian. If you're not already, please do subscribe. We appreciate your subscriptions. We also are a nonprofit newsroom, so subscriptions, advertising, and donations are how we support what the Daily Memphian does. I mentioned Sidebars on every week. What last week we had, I think Stuart Harris was last week, right? The Steric building, the big, beautiful historic building that's been essentially abandoned since about 1986, talking about their plans, not just for the building, but for the neighborhood and why neighborhoods and historic structures like that really matter. We also recently had the folks from For the Kingdom on. They do amazing work with at-risk youth and families throughout the city, based out of Raleigh. They do camps. They do a lot of food insecurity things, mentoring, job training. It's a great group and a really great program. Also, maybe a month ago now, but it still was a great conversation. Zoe Carr, the relatively new head of the Brooks Museum, was here talking about both the new building that is, the new construction site downtown, but also all the exhibits and everything that's going on at the facility in Overton Park. Behind the Headlines, which we do with WKNO every week, is recently Jim Strickland, the mayor of Memphis, was on talking about all the many things going on with the city. And we've got coming up Memphis City Council, I think was last week. Is that right? I'm looking at Natalie Van Gundy, producer of all these shows. The number of members of Memphis City Council were on last week talking about issues in front of the council. And then coming up this week, we've got the folks from the Memphis Airport and Airport Authority talking about the change in leadership there, the new terminal, new directions, all kinds of things going on with the airport. And last but not least, I mentioned the Jim Strickland, who is not running for re-election because he's termed out. We did a debate recently with 5 of the top candidates for city mayor. If you missed that, you can get that at YouTube. Just search for Daily Memphian, or you can go to the Daily Memphian site and search for mayoral debate or Daily Memphian mayoral debate, and that will bring up the video of that conversation, that debate we had with them. But again, we're here with Kevin Thompson, the head of MoSH, and the rebranding. Do people still get mad at you? Do they celebrate you? Do they? I mean, I'm guilty of this. And I'm an adopted Memphian, but I still sort of just in protest call, Regional 1. I still call it the Med. I mean, I'm guilty of some of this as well. People there's a group of people who don't like change, right? Yeah. And so do you get pushback on the name change or the branding still?
Not as much. You mentioned it. People don't like change, but it's also an affinity and a nostalgia, right? And so we have in our minds a concept of what something was back when we enjoyed it the way we enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And we don't want it to change, and we don't want to leave that because we like that. And so what we're trying to do is set new relationships with folks today, families, youth, where they have that same affinity. And I think we've lost that over the last couple of decades. And so, but no, I think, we knew going in, there's a group that would like it. There's a group that's indifferent, and there was a group that would not like it. And it was really by age, and we really didn't have to do a market study for that.
Yeah. Right.
And the comments have fallen exactly where we expected it. So,
right.
And it's the same thing. I do the same thing at, Memphis State.
Right.
I did that a couple of weeks ago, right?
Right. Right.
And I think as long as you're in Memphis, what we didn't do, MoSH is an umbrella brand to connect all our properties. So it is not the Pink Palace. It is not Lichterman. We use those as locators. And then when we push MoSH programming in our markets outside of Memphis, we really are bringing people back through website links or QR codes. So they know where to go.
Yeah.
So it's not as much of an issue, but welcome to call it Pink Palace if you're local.
You're not banned from doing that in any way.
No, not at all.
Yeah. And talk more. That was a big emphasis you said when y'all are doing strategic planning, and then obviously some of them got waylaid with COVID. Yeah. But in terms of bringing people in from out of town, has that been successful? Are you able to measure that yet? Or?
We're beginning to measure it. Yeah. So like I said, we've been working with Memphis Travel and collecting data.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that, man, it's incredible what you can get off a cell phone.
Yeah.
And so
it's kind of creepy, really.
It's really creepy. Makes me want to throw it away. But so we've been really digging into the data to see what our impact is. And then you also mentioned the brand too. The big part of that was we had to put a stake in the ground to say we're changing and we're moving the museum in a different direction, and we're willing to make that commitment. And so, when we started talking about brand change in the planning sessions, I kind of put, that's marketing. We don't need that. And really talk to the strategic planners kind of one-on-one. And they really convinced me, no, you do. If you're going to make this kind of a directional shift in the museum and really bring it back, you got to put that stake in the ground and let the public know what you're doing. And then hold yourself accountable to delivering. And so that's where we are. We put the stake in the ground. Right now, what we're doing is working on the programming. We've, changed the organizational structure. We've redone a lot of our internal processes. And now what we're looking at is the external client-facing, I call it, public-facing pieces of it, where we're looking at programming. So we're looking at exhibits, we're adding that Memphis component, and we're slowly moving into that direction of where we anchor off the Mississippi embayment long-term.
Yeah. What was it, a year ago? It was in the last year. Y'all, we don't have to dwell on this, but I do want to talk, and I think I mentioned this before we started, but there was the controversy with the drag show that was for the fun. It was a fundraiser, or was it after?
No, just an event.
An event.
Yeah. So we did a, again, national touring exhibit on Stonewall, and then a local Memphis Proud exhibit. First time an LGBTQ plus exhibit's ever been done in the museum's history. I think we kind of got caught up in the political landscape just right at the beginning of all that.
Yeah, right.
So, but as we planned our programming around the event, one of the things that came up was, so we had an advisory group that helped us put the local component of the exhibit together. And that was everybody from high school all the way up to folks who have been in, LGBTQ rights movements forever here.
Yeah.
And as we pull that together, the high schoolers said, we're underage. We don't have anywhere to go. We really would like something fun that we can get together and be ourselves. And so that's where the idea came from. They said, we'd like to do an all ages family-friendly drag show. I said, okay. We didn't see an issue with that. Well, as soon as we posted it on Facebook, I think that's the time it really became political, and we got picked up by, it was actually a person in Wisconsin that started trolling our Facebook and really stirred things up. And then we got into some of the far right, talk shows, and it just snowballed into Proud Boys showing up at the event.
Yeah.
So, definitely a very interesting event.
Was that, had to have been slightly terrifying just from you've got kids, you've got families, you're a museum, you're having this fun event. And now there's some scary individuals, even separating out the politics, right?
Yes.
Like, hey, we've got safety issue potentially.
That was the sole reason we really shut it down.
Yeah.
And not just that, we had 150 people at that event, and we had roughly 150 people at a planetarium event, which weren't there for that reason. And so, over 300 people in the building that evening. It was nail biting, kind of constant on the phone, very stressful for us, to go through. At the same time, everybody got home very safely. We worked with MPD to get through that. And that was the primary concern, and would do that in that case again. The bigger issue is, to me, and there was a New York Times article that even came out of that we were featured in, is really, are we at a point in our society where we want guns to dictate what we do and don't? And that's a real political issue that we need to address, especially in our state here, as we see loose gun laws and we see the crime that we have as a result of that, the problems the police have as a result of that.
Yeah.
And, in an urban setting. And I get it. I have friends who collect guns. That's great. Friends who shoot guns for fun, friends who hunt, but that's not really what we're talking about in an urban setting where we just don't need guns in a museum setting. We don't need them in our schools. We don't need them loose in the public.
And it's an interesting thing for a museum or a cultural institution. I mean, you're on the one hand, y'all made a choice to do this event and to have the exhibit, but you also, if it's going to attract people with guns and you've got families, it's sort of like, at some point, do the guns win? Right. Just not that you will, say, no, we believe we will do this again. We would do it again, except how do we do it again if people are going to show up, I think legally with a gun and stand across the street?
Is that
which is legal in this state?
Want our society to head,
right?
And
but what do you end up doing? We don't have to go too deep on this.
I know.
Because it's a hugely, the chilling effect of something like that to say, hey, do we really want to do something that creates risk when we're a family-oriented, cultural institution, but you're also a museum that wants to kind of document and have intellectual independence. It's a huge quandary.
It really is. And, it's something we talk about in the museum industry. I'm going to our national conference next week, and we actually have a group of CEOs, and this is one of our topics because we're not the only museum facing these issues. But it's also one where, and it's like my daughter, sending her to Bill Street Music Fest this weekend as a 16-year-old with her friends without dad being there, right?
Yeah, right.
Do you just say no because there was a shooting at the wine race before? You can't go out and you lock yourself in. You can't. We have to keep moving forward as a society. And we hope the leaders in our, at our state that make these laws really start to come back to the middle and not the extreme right or left. And that's where we really need as a society, because I think 90% of us are in the middle. We may lean left or right on some issues, but that's not who we are as a society. We've really let the polls drive the policy, and we really need to get out and really bring the middle back to control and power within our government. So.
We could talk about this for
that's a whole other topic,
exactly.
Right?
But
we'll do an exhibit.
Exactly. But we are running out of time. I always try to ask people, because again, we're on YXR and essentially a music station with some talk, thankfully. What was the first concert you went to?
Oh gosh, the first one I really remember going to was like the Monkees in Biloxi, Mississippi.
Nice. Is that where you grew up?
I grew up Ocean Springs, Mississippi, on the coast.
Monkees.
So the Monkees, I guess, would be the first one I really.
Was it like at a fairgrounds kind of thing?
It was at a Coliseum, kind of about the size of the Liberty Bowl Coliseum. And I was fourth row, right in front of the big speaker, and my ears were ringing for weeks. That's how I remember.
That's pretty good. That's the first, the Monkees. I like that. That's really good. All right. Well, we're out of time though. But Kevin Thompson from MoSH, thanks for being here.
Really thank you, Eric. Really appreciate it.
And that is all the time we have. A reminder: the Sidebar airs on WYXR 91.7 every Thursday at 11:30. You missed any of the show today? You can get it as a full podcast on the Daily Memphian site, WYXR, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next week.